Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf mem chet, and we will actually also do daf mem tet today because tomorrow is Tisha B'av, and generally we don't learn Torah on Tisha B'av, other than the certain portions in the Gemara, and of course Eicha and the like, that are sadder of nature, and so this way we'll have covered both dapim. Especially it was very nice of Ellie to make some progress into Memchet today. Let me share my screen and we'll fully get started. So where are we? We concluded yesterday with a somewhat remarkable statement by Rav Huna. Rav Huna said that if someone is hung until he sells property, the sale is a valid sale. Now, let's just clarify exactly what that means. It seems like it covers both mental anguish along with physical anguish, but a very key element of it. We saw it yesterday. Hopefully, we saw it yesterday, and we'll see it again, I believe, today, is the fact that the person was paid. Meaning, if you hang somebody until he gives you the property, that's not a gift. So it's only valid if the full value of the property was given. Now, it could be that that's the fair market value of the property, but you would have wanted to get paid, a couple extra $1 million. That doesn't work. Then it's still a good sale. But if in fact the market price for that property is not what was paid, well, then that's not going to be a valid sale. So a key element here is the fact that the person, quote unquote, did not lose because he was in fact paid the full market price. We came up, as we analyzed this yesterday, we tried 3 times to provide an explanation, and we rejected the explanation each time. And then we offered a 4th explanation, and we explained effectively that it's just logical, that it was based on the fact that it's just basically it was based on a logical argument. And if we take a look, let me see if the Rashbam on this, we'll back up a little bit and do this Rashbam. It's the Rashbam Divrei Hamaskel Ella, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines down in the narrow lines on Memchet Amud Aleph. First word on the line. Ella, so again, Rav Huna was the one who made the statement. Ella Rav Huna misfara didei ka'amar. He came up with it on his own logic. Demitoch Yisurim Gamar Bilibo, that because of the pain he was put in, the aggravation, etc., the person who was the owner had complete intention, umakne, and he made a valid kinyan. Hoel ve'ika tarti, because there were 2 aspects, Yisurim umatan maos, both the pain, but also the giving of the money. Delo mafsid midi, because the person recognized that he really didn't lose. So that's, again, this is a very key element to this. And so, yes, he might have lost what he would have been willing to sell, but the bottom line is that we're going to say that he sold it for an actual true value. So that's a very important element to keep in mind. So now again,
But so that he saw,
go ahead.
so he sold the property, as we said yesterday, for the fair market value.
Correct.
And even though initially he didn't really want to do it, but in the end he agreed to want to do it because of he was sort of forced to want to do it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, again, if in fact he doesn't get paid the full value, that's theft. If he gets paid the full actual market value, so then we're going to say it's a valid transaction and we're not going to undo it. And one can understand why, because, again, I think the Gemara understands that there is a need for definitiveness in terms of who owns real property. And if I can come back and say to you, listen, you were teasing me and that's how you forced me to sell it to you. You did X, Y, and Z. You were being a very annoying neighbor and you said that's why you forced me to, etc., etc. If we allow that kind of thing, it will undermine a sense of ownership of property. And so that's what we're talking about. So that's why we don't want to sort of leave open the possibility too easily of undoing transactions. Now we are going to learn today the method, the protective method, the things that you can do. So that way, if God forbid this were ever to happen to you, you have the ability to undo the sale transaction.
Well, he
So
was sort of teasing him in a way, right? Because he was saying until he said Rotzani.
yes, yes, exactly, 100%.
So
That's my
it
point.
becomes valid at a fair market value.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The point is that if you can prove failure to give the fair market value, then you can undo the transaction. Otherwise not. So let's take a look. So we're going to ask now a question. Again, we came to the conclusion that if somebody hung another person until he sells the property, the sale's a valid sale. And now Rav Yehuda is going to quote a Mishnah in Gittin Daf Pechet Amabet that suggests that a decision through duress does not work. So let's take a look. Mosiv Rav Yehuda. So this is one, two. We're right. Third word from the end of the line, and we are 8 lines down on Memchet Amud Aleph. Mosiv Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda asks the question: Get Hamausa. If you force a get, be Yisrael kosher. If a Jew forces a get, it's considered kosher. Uba ovde kochavim puzzle. But with a non-Jew, it's not. It's not kosher. Uba'ovde kochavim chovtim osova omrin lo asay mashi Yisrael omer lacha. But if the non-Jew was told, to go and hit the Jew and say, do what the Jewish people are telling you, well, then again, it will work. My 1 second. What about that middle case? Why doesn't if in fact force is sufficient, why doesn't the middle case work? Hasam nami nema agav unse gamar umigrash. Why don't we say that he made his decision that he was going to divorce her? Take a look at Rashbam, 1, 2, 3, 6 lines up, last word on the line. Hasam nami nema agav unse gamar umigrash. Dahal lo masid midi. The husband doesn't lose anything by giving the get. Dumya Dizvini Shemakabel Demei Sadeu, just like the person who's forced to sell his field and gets the price of the field. Dekevin Sheishto, Sonato, since clearly his wife already hates him. Ubelow gate Nami, Lo Tamod Etzlo. And she's not going to be next to him, stand next to him, even without a get. Ubeget Zeh. Eino el hatera la'achareha, that this get only allows her to marry somebody else. So lo mafsid klum, he's not going to lose anything. He's already got to take care of her and help her anyway. And so there's no financial ramifications or repercussions either. So bottom line is that we're going to say that he should be allowed. And now, what does the Gemara answer? So the Gemara tells us that the answer to the question is ha'it marla. That no, we have to remember the following was taught about that Mishnah. Amar of Masharshia, Rav Masharshia says, Devar Torah afilu ba'ovdikol chavim kasher. Really, this was a good get, even when the non-Jew forces the Jew to do it. Why did the Mishnah, in fact, rule that it was not kosher? Because we're worried that this will facilitate women who want a divorce hooking up with non-Jews and using those non-Jews to force their former husbands to give them a divorce. Miyad bala. And that's how she'll get herself away from her husband. So we don't want that kind of action to happen. So we're going to prevent that kind of behavior from moving forward. Whereas when you have a Jew, yes, a Jew can force, but the Jew is also not allowed to marry her or be with her because she's married. So as a result, that in that situation, we're not worried about the same kind of immoral behavior. Okay, so Mosiv Rav
But
Hamnuna.
she's not. She shouldn't be with a goy either, right?
Well, that's exactly the point. We don't want her to go to a goy. If we allowed the goy to force the Jew to give the divorce, then she might go to a goy, have an affair with the goy in order to encourage him to put pressure on her former husband, on her current husband, but on the husband that she's leaving, and that would result in immoral behavior. So we therefore say that even if the non-Jew were to force the get, we're not going to treat it as a real get.
But isn't there, if she were to go to another Jew, isn't that also immoral behavior?
Yes, but presumably the Jew will know that it's immoral behavior. The question is who is it immoral for, right? The Jew will see, both parties will see it as immoral if she goes to a Jew, because and he'll see that, well, what does he need to do in order to have relations with this woman? He needs to force the guy to give a divorce. So now he'll beat up the guy and he'll force the divorce. That will be a kosher
Not
get
beat up
because
the
they give
guy,
what?
beat up the girl, the lady, right? Oh no,
Oh,
beat up the
no,
guy. Okay, beat up, right,
of the guy.
right.
And so that will be fine. But if in fact the girl goes to a non-Jewish guy, he doesn't see having relations with this woman as immoral. She's not interested in being with her former husband, who, on some level in the non-Jewish world, it totally makes sense that as soon as you decide that you don't want to be with somebody, you don't have to be with that person. So from that perspective, there's no formal in Judaism does not have a formal get process for non-Jews. And so as a result, as soon as she's no longer desires to be with her husband, from a non-Jewish perspective, she can be with the non-Jew. But of course, that's not true from the Jewish perspective. So that doesn't work. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So the next challenge, again, Rav Huna said again that if someone sells something by force, it's a good sale. But listen to the following Mishnah, which almost seems to completely contradict Rav Huna. Mosiv Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna says, listen to this Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in Gittin Daf Nun Hey Amabet. Lakach Masikri Yikon. If you purchase and really it's take. If somebody takes property from an extortionist, or I guess with a purchase, and he similarly acquires it from the balabayas. At the moment, we're going to. This is unclear what it means by lakach. Does he mean with cash? Does it mean just making a kinyan? At the moment, we're going to assume that it means with cash. Well, makho batel, their acquisition is void. It's not a good acquisition, notwithstanding the fact that clearly the extortionist used force, and so the force should make it a good transaction. V'amai, why should it not be a good transaction? Hasanami nema agav unse gamaru makne. Let's say that the guy he was forced, but because of the force, he intended to make the acquisition. As Rashbam points out, 5 lines into the wide lines of Rashbam, first words on the line. Nema agavonse, desikrikon, gamar, umakne balabayas. As a result of the pressure from the sikrikon, the balabayas came to a conclusion and made a valid kinyan. Kaven diyahiv lezuzi. After all, and he's going to get the money. So below mafsid, he didn't lose anything. Low mafsid midi. Dahainu this is just like a hang and sale situation. So
Well, who is the Balabaya here? The original owner or
the
the new
original owner,
person?
correct.
So what kinyan did the original owner make?
He said to well, again, as a simple read, he sold the property. That's the kinyan that he made. He
Well, so he gets
facilitated.
kinyan, or is it he got money? He
Yeah,
didn't.
he got money. He got money. So ha itmar Allah amrav lo shanu ela de amrle le chazeku kni. So now we're going. Rav says, one second. That Mishnah is only true when the person says go make an acquisition. Aval bishtar kana. If he actually writes with a contract, well, then it would be a good kinyan. And at the moment, we're going to assume that why is it not a good kinyan when he says, Joe, just go and perform an act? That's because he didn't really get any money. But when he says, all right, I'm going to write up a contract for you, well, then we're going to assume that he received the money. And so as a result, that's why it's a good transaction. But one
But I thought
second,
we did get money. I wouldn't say Gamar Maknim. We were just saying that when he Maknim means he got money. That was the Kenyan he made, right?
not again, I want to make very clear that it's not clear in this Mishnah, did the person get money or not? So we're going to understand initially that he did get money. Now we're understanding that according to Rav, the Mishnah is talking about where he did not get money, but if he did a star, presumably he did get money, and therefore it was valid. But now we're going to ask a question on that. So we're in the end, we are going to say that this Mishnah is talking about no money passing hands, according to the people, according to whom we paskin, according to Rav Huna is the key element. And again, I should note that we actually paskin like Rav Huna, that if someone is hung until he sells property, the sale is a valid sale if the person got the full value. Okay. But so right now, at this moment, we are understanding that that Mishnah is not talking about money. And Rav tells us that if it was a contract, then it would be then it suggests that it's about money, and therefore it's a valid contract. But Shmuel de Amar Apishtar Nami Lokana. 1 second. Shmuel says that even the contract, even with a contract, it's not an acquisition. So Ma'ikal Amemer, how do you explain it? So Moda Shmuel Heked Yav Zuzi. No, Shmuel understood the contract case also as not being about money. But if in fact money were to pass hands, it would be a valid transaction. So in second, what about the following? We have another statement that Rav Bibi, the Messiah Ba Mishmei de Rav Nachman, Rav Bibi, outside the context of where we were talking about, in another situation, if you remember back a little while, we saw that Rav B. We saw the case. In fact, we can do it in the. We'll do a Rashbam on this. So let's finish the language and then we'll see. Karka Einlo Mos Yeshlo. That in the context, I'll give you the details and then we'll see it again in the Rashbam. That where there was a robber who took away land and gave money for it. Even though he gave money, he does not get the land according to Rav Nachman, but he gets his money back. So Ma'ikal Amemar, what is there to say? Because obviously, according to Rav Nachman, you would understand the Mishnah from Gittin when it says V'lakach mibala bayas, it means giving money, as we originally thought. And so now all of our answers go away. So my Ikalamemer, let's take a look at Rashbam. It's from the bottom of the Rashbam. It's 9 lines up, end of the line. Urav Bibi de Messiah Le'el. So the Milse de Rav Nachman, in the matter of Rav Nachman, de Amar Gazlan Shehevi Raya, that when you have a thief who brings proof, Ein Raya so Raya, his proof of acquisition is not sufficient because he's a thief. Ve'ein ma'amidin sada biyada. We don't leave him with the field. Ve'osif Rav Bivi, and Rav Bivi added, Aval mos yeshlo, but we will give back his money, legazlan, shenasan lenigzal, the money that the thief gave to the victim. Alma svirolele Rav Bivi. So as a result, it's clear that according to Rav Bivi, the afilu nasan hagazlan lenigzal mos lokana, that even if the thief gives the money to the victim where he doesn't make an acquisition, to tell you of a zavin lo havizvini, that clearly when you hang somebody and force somebody to make a sale, it is not a valid sale. V'hu adin lahach Mishnah de Sikrikon. So it must be that he would say that when it came to this Mishnah of Sikrikon, that when we say de inasan hasikrikon o alokeach mimenu lebala bias most, that when we say that we're talking about a situation where the sikrikon or the buyer from the sikrikon actually gives money to the original owner, Demei has said that the value of the field lo kana. It's not an acquisition, the kashila Rav Huna, and that seems, given that this is based on a Mishnah, that would seem to contradict our understanding, according to Rav Huna. So the answer, of course, is a little bit not satisfactory.
Is
Rav
this an
Bibi Memra,
established? Is this
what
an established thief that we know from before? Is he stealing this field?
we know that he stole this field. We
So
have
then,
evidence.
so what's the raya that he brought that he purchased the field? If we know
He
he
has
stole
he
this
has the
field,
you wrote him a deed. So as a result, you wrote him a deed and he paid you money.
so how did he steal it then? If one
Well, first he stole
wrote him
it
a
from
deed.
you. He came to you, and he said, "Listen, get off the field." Or he was, he went onto the field for a couple of years, and he said, "Don't you dare come onto my field, but here I'm going to give you some money." And you're like, "Oh well, I'm going to take whatever I can get." And he gives you the fair value of the field. So in that situation, Rav Nachman said that he doesn't get the field, that he's not Kona. And Rav Bibi said about that when Rav Nachman said that, what he meant is that the thief does not get the money, the land, but he does get back any money that he paid because that wasn't a valid transaction. So that seems, and especially given that, so now we can understand the Sikri Kon Mishnah in Gittin as clearly being about a situation where the victim gets paid. We had tried to understand, both according to Rav and Shmuel, that this Mishnah was talking about where the victim does not get paid. But now, according to Rav Bivi, based on the teaching of Rav Nachman, it seems like that Mishnah has to be a situation where he does get paid, or at least Rav Nachman would understand it that way. So Rav Bivi Memrahu. So Rav Bivi was just saying the ruling of Rav Nachman. Umeimra le Rav Huna lo svirale. And Rav Huna doesn't hold of that Memra. So the point is that in the end, this wasn't a defined teaching about the Mishnah. If it was, in fact, a conclusive teaching about the Mishnah and in which everybody understood the Mishnah in a particular way, so then we would have to say that in fact that Mishnah would present a question. But now we're going to say that no, it's just Rav Bibi's understanding, and therefore we have the flexibility for Rav Huna to disagree. So again, two questions that we've had according to on Rav Huna. We've answered both of them, and now we're going to get what the halacha is. So let's
who
take a
pays
look.
him? In this case, where the Sikrikon takes him, Sikrikon is not going to pay him.
Correct. But
So
look at the
the other
language.
person comes and he says, I know the Sikrikon took it from you, but I'm going to buy it from you anyway. Is that a valid
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So take a look right back in the right by Mosiv Reb Hamnuna. So it's smack in the middle of the Gemara that we of the daf, right? So let me find it. It's 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12 lines up. Third word from the end of the line. So, right, Moshe Rav Hamnuna, lakach mesikrikon, v'chazar v'lakach mebalabayas, right? The person purchases it from, according to the way Rav Bivi understands this Mishnah, the person purchased it from the sikrikon, and he went back and he purchased it from the balabayit, meaning that the balabayit got paid in full. And so, as a result, that's where we're saying that even though, according to Rav Huna, in that situation, it would be a valid sale, this Mishnah seems to say that it's not a valid sale. And so the answer is Rav Huna understands that Mishnah differently. And Rav Huna understands that when we say lakach, it means you made an acquisition from, not that you actually made a purchase from. Very important difference. You made a kinyan, and it was presumably a kinyan sudar, that, the other person facilitated the kinyan, but that doesn't mean that he was paid. Because if he was paid, then Rav Huna's rule would kick in, and Rav Huna would say that you don't, that the transaction's a valid transaction. So let's take a look. Amar Rava, Hilchasa, the last line of the, now we're up to the last line of the Gemara on Mem Chedam and Aleph, Teluyu v'zabim zvine zvine. That if in fact you hang somebody and force them to sell, it's a valid sale. However, very important caveat, although we will not in fact paskin like this caveat, below Amran, as we turn to Memchet Amud Bet, Ella Bisoda Stam. When you tell the person, I'm buying a field from you. I'm not telling you which field, but I'm buying a field from you. And the other person now sells you one of his fields. Aval Bisoda Zu. But if the forcer of the sale were to tell you, I'm going to force you to sell me this field, low, then that not necessarily is that going to be a valid sale. Ubisadazu nami lo amran. And when we say that if you force the person to sell this field, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a good sale. Elo de lo artsi zuze. Aval artsi zuze low. But if that's where you don't actually count out the money. Where the seller does not actually count out the money because he's just going to take whatever he gets, meaning it's clearly a case of forcing if the guy doesn't count out the money to make sure that every penny that the guy gave is actually given. But if, in fact, the guy counts out the money, that suggests some element of greater willingness. So therefore, we'll say that would be a good sale. So again, at this moment, it's a valid sale if you don't specify the field, or if you specify the field, but the seller counts out the money that he receives. Below Amran, Ella de lo have ishtemute, aval have ishtemute low. And we, of course, another element that even if I don't count out the money, if I have a way out, well, then it's not going to be. Then it's going to be a valid sale. It's only where I don't have a way out that we'll say that it's an invalid sale, even if I count out the money. But if in fact I don't count out, if in fact I do have a way out, then even if I don't count out the money, even if it's a specific field, it will not be a valid sale. And so at the moment, according to Rava, a forced sale works unless this field is specified, the money is not counted, and there's no other way out. So you need 3 conditions according to Rava. But in fact, all of these cases, even in that case, the halacha is that a forced sale is a valid sale. Even when you specify the field. And why? Now, it's interesting.
So if he doesn't have a way out, it's
still a valid sale. Even if he doesn't have a way out, it's still going to be a valid sale. And again, remember, we're going to get to, God willing, a method of saving the transaction so it won't be a valid sale.
If he doesn't have a way out, then it's a valid sale.
Yeah, even if he doesn't have a way, even if there's nothing he can do, right? Now one can understand if there's a way out, why it would be a valid sale. Meaning if all you have to do is walk away from me and because I'm teasing you, and you could just walk away and close the door, but you succumb to my teasing and you then sell me the field, so then we're going to say it's a valid sale because you didn't have to stand there and take my teasing. You could have just shut the door and walked away. But if in fact, but in the end, we're going to say that even if you could have walked away, it's going to be a valid sale. Meaning even if you couldn't walk away, we're going to say it's a valid sale. So, and why? Because the ha'isha kisadazu damya, that we're going to say a woman is like the field. How is a woman like the field? Because listen to the following: v'amar amemar teluya v'kadosh kedushav kedushin. That if in fact a man hangs a woman up and says that he's going to marry her and she needs to accept the marriage, it's a valid marriage until if she accepts it. Mar Barav Ashi Amar, however, that in fact is not necessarily the halacha, although the halacha is that a forced sale is a good sale. When it comes to forcing a woman to marry you, it is not a good sale, because we actually paskin like Mar Barav Ashi, who says Be'isha vade kedushin lo having. No, it's definitely not a good kedushin. Who asa shalo kahogan? He did something inappropriate. Lefikach asu imo shalo kahogan. So therefore, we do something for him that's inappropriate. Ba'afke inhu rabbanan lekadushe mine, and the rabbis undermine the entire kedushin process. So Amrle Ravina Ravashi. Tainach the Kaddish Bekaspa, Kaddish Bevia my Ikalamemer. Well, okay, that works if she married with money. We could just say that the money goes back to the man and is not a valid transaction. But what if they engaged in relations? And that was how they married. So Amrle Ravashi explained, no, Shavua Rabbanan Levi'ila, so Be'ilas Nus, that no, they made her those marital relations into an immoral act by the man. And so as a result, if she's forced, it's not going to be a good transaction. Okay, so now let's get to what I'm sure everybody wants to know, which is, okay, well, what do you do to avoid this terrible situation if somebody is trying to hang you out to dry, so to speak? So tabi tala lepapi akinra dezabin. Vizabin, Vizabin. So a Tabi hung Papi from a Kinra tree. A Kinra tree, according to Jastro, is a what is it called? It's it's this tree that has this small fruit. Let's see, does it give a translation here? It's like it's I think it's like a Christ bush or something along those lines. It's like this. It's a smaller tree that has a small fruit on it, and according to legend, there's that's the tree that the reason that it has that name is that's the tree that Yeshu's thorn crown was made from. But in any event, the bottom line is that this tree is very common in Israel and in the Middle East. And so he hung him from that tree and he sold the property. Well, Chasam Rabba Bar Barchana Amoda'ah. Rabba Barchana signed a moda'ah. A moda'ah, you may remember from last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, is a document that notifies the public that I am being forced to do something. It's usually signed in private and is brought out with a date that is prior to the date of the transaction. And Rabbi signed Va'ash Galta. He also signed on the document of sale. So Amar Rav Huna, man dechasim amoda'ah shaper chasim, uman dechasim ashkalta shaper chasim. So Rav Huna said that the one who signed the moda'ah, the document that undermines the transaction, was signed properly, and the one who signed on the sale contract also signed properly. Now the Gemara is like very confused because presumably you should sign one and not the other. So manavshach, and only one of them could be good. Imoda'ah lo ashkalta. If the moda'ah is valid, well then the ashkalta is not valid. The ashkalta, and if the sale document is good, lo moda'ah, the notification of the illegitimate transaction is not valid. So hakikamar. So really, this is what Rav Huna is saying. Ilav moda'ah. If not for the notification, man de chasam ashkalta shaper chasam. If then the signed document would be a real sale, it would be a valid sale, because a forced sale if you don't have a notice of coercion is a valid sale. But now that there was this valid coercion document, the document that notified of coercion, so now as a result, it's not going to be a valid sale. So now we all know that if, in fact, we're ever forced to sell something, we need to make sure that we sign a document that says that this sale is not a valid sale and that I'm being forced to do it. And you do that in private, and now you'll be able to have a way of undermining the transaction. So Rav Huna Lataimei, and again Rav Huna follows his reasoning to Amar Rav Huna Taluya Bezabin Zvini Zvini. That in fact, if the person gets hung, when they sell the property, it's a valid sale. Well, in second, Aini, is that really true? Rav Nachman, we have a statement of Rav Nachman. Ha'edim she'amru amna hayu amana hayu dvarenu. That if witnesses say that what we signed was actually a document of trust. Now, Rashbam here explains that we're talking about witnesses 4 lines up, hatumim b'shtar, who signed a contract. So they are a contract. We're going to see what kind of contract. Right now, we're talking about a loan contract. If they signed a loan contract and they say that actually this loan never happened, but rather we were asked to sign the document because just in case the borrower ever needed to borrow the money, so the borrower wanted the seller to have a signed contract that said he owed money from today. And this is not something that one should do. In fact, it's a sin to engage in this because effectively you're predating a loan document, and predating a loan document allows you to collect from property that was sold after the date of the document, but before the date of the loan, and that's improper. Meaning you're allowed to collect from a creditor is allowed to collect from property that was sold after the date of the loan, but it has to be the date of the loan. You can't predate a document, and effectively this document is being predated. And so that is not, dated early. So that's not a valid thing to do. So therefore, we're not going to ein ne'emanim, those witnesses who say that in fact this document that looks to be, for all intents and purposes, a valid loan contract, they are not going to be believed when they say that it was not a valid loan contract. And the reason is because we don't trust a person to make themselves a Russia. And that's what effectively they're doing. And similarly, moda'ah hayu dvarenu ein emanim. And of course, this is the question that we're asking. And if the witnesses were to say that that everything that we did was preceded by the fact that we were told that it was all being forced, again, they're not believed. Oh, 1 second. We just said that if you have a contract that says that the person's not forced, it is a valid contract, and we'll say that it's not a valid, and the sale transaction will no longer be valid. But here we're saying that if you have a sale transaction, now the witnesses are not believed to say that the document was forced. So obviously the answer is
it's not a forced document, it is valid. What?
Again, if in fact the witnesses to a sale contract that witnessed and signed a document that gives the deed from me to you, Ken, they now testify that you actually forced me to give it to you, they will not be believed, is what Rav Nachman says. And yet 2 minutes ago, we said that Rav Huna, when viewing the contract that was signed by Rabba Bar Bar Chana, said that it was a valid moda'ah, that the notification was valid, and therefore the sale transaction in that situation, when Puppy was being forced to sell the property, is not a valid sale transaction. So how can we distinguish between Rav Nachman's ruling, where we don't trust the moda'ah, we don't trust the witnesses that there was a moda'ah, and Poppy's transaction, where we say that the moda'ah signed by Rabba Bar Chana was a valid moda'ah? So Hani Mili Alpeh. So the answer is pretty obvious. Rav Nachman's ruling was an oral notification. There was never a written contract. Delo asi al peh umar lishtara. We're not going to allow a oral testimony to undermine and say is invalid a contract. Aval bishtara, if it had been another contract, Asishtara umara lishtara. Well, then one contract can undermine another contract. So again, we've now seen that there is a very clear and important clarification here. That in fact, I'm sorry for not scrolling my screen. I'll scroll to allow people to see. A very important clarification here that in order to make a forced sale invalid, you need a written document. Unless, of course, the forced sale is only an oral sale. But bottom line is that if you want to undermine a written document, that the moda'ah, the notification of a forced sale, needs to also be written. Okay, so
But
Gufa.
to whom is this? Wait a second. If they're writing a document, isn't that a proof that and witnesses that agreed to this arrangement? So how does that undermine something else if that's
Let's go through it. We'll go through it step by step, Ken. So start with the fact that you're forcing me to sell you a piece of property. So, and you are going to get Stan and Moshe to sign the contract, the deed that gives you the property. So before that happens, I get Mark and Jonathan and Charlie, Mark and Charlie, to both sign a document that says that I am being forced to sell it to you, sell this property to you. So now the document that I have with Charlie and Mark's signature on it, which is dated before the date of my sale to you of the property, it says that I was forced to sell, and so as a result, I am not going to when you now bring out that deed, I will bring out my forced sale document, and that will show that I was forced to sell it to you, and I didn't want to sell it to you, and therefore it will the sale document that you have will be invalid, and I will be able to retain my property.
the sale document?
Right? You have a
Right.
deed in your possession that's signed by Stan and Moshe that says that I sold you the property. But I have a predated document that is signed by Mark and Charlie that says that I was forced to make that sale. And therefore, I am not going to, that my document is going to wipe out your document because mine is dated earlier. And your document will now not be a valid sale document. And so as a result, I will win the case and get to keep my property.
Does it say in the document, this moda'ah, that the sale was forced?
Yes, that's all it says. It says that when Ken purchases Ken is forcing David to sell the property. Now, the truth is, I say that it's dated before. I don't know. It could be that if it's dated the same date, that is also valid. I'm not 100%
But
sure.
why would they put in the document, I'm forcing you to sell the property? I mean,
Because
that defeats the purpose, right?
yes, that's exactly right. That's the whole point. I am trying to stop my sale from going through, right? Remember, if you force me to sell the property and I saw and Stan and Moshe serve as witnesses, even though you forced me to sell the property, you paid me the money. As a result, you are going to be the owner of the property. And I don't want that to be the case. I want to be able to retain my property. So I go and get Charlie and Mark to sign a moda'ah. And I don't give you that moda'ah. I hold on to that moda'ah, and I don't even tell you about that moda'ah because I want you to think, because I want you to stop annoying me. I want you to think that you've successfully purchased the property. And so as a result, now I go and take you to court, and I say to the court, hey, Ken forced me to sell and I didn't mean to, and here's my evidence. And you say, well, 1 second, I have a deed that David signed that shows that I am the current owner. But I say, no, I before I signed that deed, I did an agreement with Mark and Charlie, and they both signed a notice that indicates that I was being forced, and as a result, it's not a valid sale.
So is he engineering this with a predated, yeah, he has a star that he sold the property. Now he says, no, I didn't really want to sell it. I'm going to find two witnesses
So the
and
key
I'm going to
is,
create another date, a prior date,
yeah.
even though
So
this
you
is
you
now
you
after.
raise a good question, right?
So how is he doing
Is
this?
this possible for
What are the
fraud, right? Is this
logistics here?
possible? So a couple things. So there are a couple reasons that this is not going to result in fraud. So the first is, now look, the bottom line is if you get two witnesses to engage in fraud, there's a lot that you can do in Judaism. So there on this, on one hand, at some level, there's an ability to there's always an ability to engage in fraud in many of these transactions. But the witnesses need to, one, know that, Ken, you were forcing me. It's not sufficient for me to just be the only witness that tells them that you were forcing me. They need to know about the forcing itself. And so they're signing the fact that I'm being forced. Okay. So that's point number one. Point number two is you get your money back. Meaning, if my moda'ah is valid, and you'll get your money back based on whatever you paid me, because I'm saying that the sale is not a valid sale. Okay, so that's the
No,
bottom
I
line.
understand, but how is he creating this? But this one person for there's a deed, a star that the
Yes, but
sale took place. So then he said, "No, I didn't really want it.
no,
I'm going to predate this.
no,
I'm
we
going to
don't.
find two
That would be
witnesses and
illegal.
say,
That would
well,
be
I
illegal,
actually
Ken.
showed, I
Ken,
actually
that
he
would be
forced me
illegal.
2 months ago."
Ken, that would be illegal. That would be illegal. I can't. I'm not allowed to predate a document. That would everybody
Right.
who's involved in that would be a Russia. So we're going to assume that the person that the point is that how do we the Gemara is struggling with the fact that we have Rav Huna's statement that a forced sale is a valid sale. So how do we address that and say that, okay, we're going to say a forced sale is a valid sale, but what is one supposed to do if one really doesn't want to sell? So the answer is before you engage in that forced sale transaction and sign any paperwork that gives Ken the money, because Ken is the one who's forcing me to do this, I go and find two people who know that Ken is forcing me to do it, and they sign a document that says that Ken is forcing David to do it, and David doesn't want to do it.
So
And
it's
if
all
they do that before
right. Okay.
I sell it to you, then I have undermined the
Right.
transaction, and my sale to you is an invalid sale. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to say, look at Rav Nachman's statement. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amana hayu dvarenu einemanim, moda'a hayu dvarenu einemanim. Again, if witnesses say that about a written testimony, so they have they have signed onto a contract that says that Ken owes me money, or they've signed on, or I owe Ken money, and they've signed on to a contract that says I sold my property to Ken, and now they come and they testify and say either that really I never borrowed money from Ken, or two, that I was forced to sell to Ken, and we said that they're not believed because it was all oral testimony. Umar Barav Ashi Amar, Mar Barav Ashi says, Amana hayadvarenu einam manim, that he agrees with the first statement, but moda'ah hayudvarenu nemanim. If in fact, the witnesses say our words were preceded by a moda'ah, it is a valid sale, and it is a valid moda'ah. Why? Why is that? Why does that make it valid? And indeed, we paskin this way. So actually, I don't even need to at least it seems that we paskin this way. So actually, I don't need to get people to sign on the dotted line. I can just tell them, and they can testify later. But of course, it would be better if I have a written document, because my timer shazen nitan lekasev. Because look, let's think about the Amana document, right? The document where I borrow money from Ken, but I never actually borrow the money. Well, the witnesses to that document should never have signed it, because that document is a cheating document, because it will allow Ken to collect from people who buy property from me from an earlier date than the date of the loan. And so that is a not valid document that should never be written. On the other hand, when
What
it
is the
comes,
document that was written?
the document was that I owe you $100. but I never borrowed the money. I just asked Stan and Moshe to write the document, and you agreed that you wanted them to write the document in case I ever needed to borrow the money. But now you come out and you say I owe you $100, and they say that when they wrote the document, they never no money ever transferred, and I say that I never got anything from you. Well, Stan and Moshe will not be believed in that situation, and I will owe you the $100 because we're going to say that it was a real. We're not going to make Stan and Moshe into Rishoim. And so presumably when they signed the document, I actually got the $100, which is what you say happened. Okay.
But
On
you
the other
say, but
hand,
you say it never happened.
I know I say it never happened, but I lose in that situation because the only way it would never have happened is if Stan and Moshe were Rishoim and signed a document that said that I borrowed money when I in fact did not, which would make them Rishoim because they would be signing to something that isn't true.
So they want you want. So we posit here that the money actually changed hands. There was
We
a
end up saying that the
and
money must have changed hands because otherwise Stan and
it-
Ramosha would be Rishayim.
right.
But on the other hand, when it comes to me being forced to sell you property, now Stan and Moshe are allowed to sign the sale document that I'm selling you, the forced sale document. Why? Even though they did the moda'ah, because they want me to stop being punished by you, Ken. And so as a result, in order to stop the mistreatment that you're mistreating me, they're allowed to sign the document. And so in that situation, it isn't a proper document for them to sign. So
It is.
therefore,
It
that
is.
so that's the story. So there, as a result, so Mar Baravashi says that when it comes to a sale situation, the moda'ah can be oral. It does not need to be a written document. And again, that seems to be how we poskin. So, all right, so we're up to the two dots. Let's get a little bit further so that we can cover again tomorrow's dot.
So you're saying that they agreed, they sort of agreed or signed the moda and they assigned the
No, they
sale
didn't sign a
document?
moda'ah. There's no written moda'ah.
Right, okay, there's no more, but
But
I'm saying
but
quotation.
they heard the moda'ah, but and then they signed the sale contract from me to you because you were beating me with a stick, and they knew that if they didn't sign the document, if I didn't sign the document and them sign the document, you'd be continuing to beat me with a stick. I wanted you to stop beating me with a stick. So that's the story. So that's the
Even though they heard or they agreed or participated in the moda to the contrary.
correct. Even though the moda'ah to the contrary, exactly, because they're rescuing me. So as a result, that makes it a valid action for them to rescue me.
Wouldn't the moda be enough to rescue you?
No, because the moda you're if the moda became public, you'd beat me even harder. Right?
Right.
You're trying to buy the property from me, and you're hitting me on the head with a stick, and God forbid, and terrible things are happening to me. So Stan and Moshe are trying to save me from that. If you knew that it wasn't a valid sale transaction ahead of time, you would keep hitting me on the head. The only reason that you stop is because that you think that you've now bought the field from me. But now I can go to court and take my field back because they know that I have a moda'ah with them that I'm being that I was forced to do the sale and I really didn't want to.
So then the sale would be invalid.
Correct. Correct. But you didn't know that at the time. If you knew that at the time, you'd have kept beating me. The only reason that it was that they were allowed to sign is not because it's a valid transaction. It's because they are trying to stop you from beating me. All right, we got to go on because
Right,
otherwise we're
okay,
not gonna.
all right,
It's not fair. So,
all right.
all right. Below the ish chazaka b'nichsei ishto. So we said in the Mishnah that a man does not get property rights can't get a chazaka in the property of his wife. So pshita, isn't that obvious? Kaven de isle lepera, perahu de ka'achel. Of course, he's eating the fruit that belongs of the field that belonged to his wife. That's what he's supposed to be doing with that field. He's supposed to be eating that fruit. Lo tzricha de kasav la din udvarim ainli b'nechasayich. Note, it's where he wrote down that I have no claim in your property. One second, kasav la my havi. We saw this same concept a few days ago. What does it make a difference if he wrote that down? But Tanya, we learned in a brisa haomer lechaberu din udvarim ainli al sadazu that if I have no claim on this field, ainli essex ba, I have no business with it. V'yadai misulakas mimenu, and my hand is is withdrawn with it, meaning he makes any of those three statements. Lo Amar Klum, he hasn't said anything, because all of those are effectively, as we saw the Rashbam explained previously, it's all a tefillah. It's all just hope for the future. It doesn't actually engage in an actual transaction. So Amri la debe Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai explained Masdisim bekosiv la ve'oda arusa. It's where he wrote this down before, while she was just in arusa, where they were engaged, while they had done kedushin but not nesuin. And the Rav Kahana, and it's as Rav Kahana said to Amar Rav Kahana. When a person inherits something, makom acher means not biblically. That's how Rashbam explains it. So then adam masta aleha shelo yirashena. So then a person has the ability, if the rabbis are giving somebody as an inheritance, so then a person can write that he does not want to receive it. But if in fact he gets something biblically, well, then he doesn't have the right. Rava, and like Rava said, Rava kol haomer efshi b'chazkas chachamim. If somebody writes that he doesn't want to, or says that he doesn't want to benefit from a rabbinic enactment, kagon zos, like this, and we'll see what this is in a moment. Shomenla, we'll listen to him and we allow him to not benefit from the enactment. So my kagon zos, what is the example? Could Rav Huna Amarav, like Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, to Amarav Huna Amarav, Yechola Isha Shetomar Labala, Eini Nuzenes ve'Eini Osa. Because a woman is allowed to say to her husband that I don't want to get any food and I will not work, meaning I'm not going, that in exchange for a husband's obligation to feed his wife, the wife has an obligation to share any proceeds of that she earns from her earnings. And so as a result, that is what we're talking about. And so as a result, that would allow him, she would be allowed to give up the food rights. And as a result, she'll be able to retain the value of the work that she does. So 1 second. So now let's go back to the question that we began with the Mishnah. And our Mishnah said that that there's no chazaka, but that implies hara'aya yesh. That in fact, although he doesn't have an ability, the husband doesn't have an ability to bring a chazaka, if in fact he brings an actual proof, if he has a deed or he has witnesses, so then it would be considered a valid sale from the wife to the husband. But Tema nachas ruach asiti lebali. Maybe she should be able to say that I was just trying to please my husband, and that's why I did it. So, and Milo Tznan, after all, don't we have the following Mishnah? Lakach min ha'ish v'chazav lakach min ha'isha. If you buy property from the husband and then you buy the wife's conditional rights to the property based on the rights that she has through the ketubah, makho batel. The purchase is void, meaning the purchase that the buyer makes from the wife is void, because Alma Amra Nachas Ruach Asisi Labali, because she can say, I did it just to please my husband, and I knew that he wanted to sell the property, and so as a result, I allowed the transaction to go forward. So Hachinami Tema Nachas Ruach Asisi Labali. So in second, so we're here too. Maybe we should say that the woman did it in order to please her husband. So how could we say that in fact, although there's no chazaka, there should be an ability for the husband to bring a proof? Well, if you want to know the answer to that question, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. So we will pick up, God willing, from there tomorrow, and look forward to continuing our learning together. Not tomorrow, to a Wednesday's daf. I apologize. So this, we've now covered tomorrow's daf for Tisha B'Av, and we'll pick up again, God willing, with Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, and all of next week will be taught by all of next weekdays will be taught by Dove, and God willing, I will be back the following week on I think it's Wednesday, it's on Wednesday the 28th. On Wednesday the 28th, I will be back, and I will look forward to continuing our learning together then. But God willing, I'm going to Israel, and wish everybody an easy and meaningful fast, and look forward to continuing our learning together. So thanks for your patience for a little bit longer than usual, Daf. Have a wonderful day, and again, an easy and meaningful fast.